Good morning. I know Caroline asked you all to take your seats, so I appreciate you guys being here this morning, bright and early. If you haven't yet, grab yourself a biscuit so we don't have to take those back to the office, because if we take them back to the office, I'll end up eating the majority of them, so I prefer you eat them here. We're thankful for everybody being here this morning, especially our speakers, Sheriff Garber and Joey Durrell. Very appreciative of you guys being here today. I'd also like to thank Conrad Como for being here, our tax assessor. I don't often thank the tax assessor for being around, but I appreciate you being here, Conrad. It's good to see you. We also have, along with Joey Durrell, we have another former mayor of Lafayette with us, Mr. Dudley Straps. Thank you for being here, sir. We appreciate you being here. As you all know, Election Day is December 8th, and early voting is open through this Saturday. So I encourage you to make sure you get out and vote. As I said last time we had one of these ballots over breakfast, remember you can't complain if you don't vote. So if you want to continue to be able to complain, you have to go vote. One Acadiana makes it a priority to educate the public on upcoming elections. In addition to the Secretary of State runoff, there are two parish-wide propositions on the ballot in Lafayette Parish. One being the proposed half-cent sales tax to fund the Sheriff's Office and law enforcement. And the second is the proposal to fix the charter by establishing a separate city council and parish council for Lafayette to ensure equal representation. And we have leaders on both of these issues here to speak with you today. First, we'll be joined by Sheriff Mark Garber. The sheriff was elected in 2015 to serve as the 27th sheriff of Lafayette Parish. With a degree from Louisiana State University and a JD from Southern Methodist University, Sheriff Garber has a unique combination of education and experience that was gained by years of being involved in the criminal justice process, from the initial investigation to arrest, prosecution, conviction, and sentencing. The sheriff will speak today regarding the half-cent sales tax proposed on the ballot. This half-cent sales tax would be new for the city of Lafayette and other surrounding municipalities, but would reduce the rate by half-cent in the unincorporated areas of Lafayette. Sheriff Garber will take questions at the conclusion of his presentation. Sheriff, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, if it's going to work, I'm going to walk around a little bit. So I've got a PowerPoint and a lot of information to get out, so I'm going to go through it really fast, and hopefully we can hone in on the issues or questions that are on y'all's mind. Can everybody hear me okay? I want to thank, first of all, One Acadiana for allowing me to be here and have the opportunity to present my proposal to the voters, to you all, and thank my command staff for being here. I've got my chief deputy and several of my majors who serve y'all, night and day in this community, and I thank them for their support. Go ahead to the next slide. So what we're doing is reapportioning an existing tax. Okay, in 2002, Sheriff Newstrom put a 1-cent tax on the ballot to the voters. Everybody in this room, I think, would agree that we had a lot more area in Lafayette Parish that was unincorporated in 2002 than we do now. There's been some very aggressive annexation and really no counterbalance to that annexation. So it addressed maybe the needs back then, but I'm actually collecting about the same amount of money on that tax that I did in 2002. It's peaked and then it went back down. That's because there's really no business or a shopping center that sprouts up that doesn't get annexed by somebody as soon as it starts producing some sales tax revenue. Next slide. So I want to talk to you about the debt that we inherited. It's a common misconception that sheriffs, when they leave office, can't leave any debt behind. That's simply not true. I've heard that from hundreds of people throughout since I was sheriff-elect. You can have debt for the office. I think that there's some laws that say you have to be accountable for the public property that you're the custodian of, and that makes a lot of sense. But the public safety complex on Willow Street, which I do not fault the prior administration for building, but I have to call it what it is, I have $18 million in debt on that public safety center. It's about $545,000 a year in interest that we're paying on that debt. In 2014-15 year, the sheriff's office had to borrow money to make it to the end of the year. They had to go to the bond commission and borrow $4 million to make it to the end of the year. That predated my administration. So for those critics out there who would say, well, Garber overspent and that's why he's in debt, this was in place and I inherited that. And I was fully aware of it when I was running because I read the audit reports that were posted online. It wasn't a surprise to me. I just said, well, I'll deal with it. I'm not going to be intimidated by that. So you've got the debt here, and you've got the demands for law enforcement that have increased along with our population. I think it's fair to say Lafayette's a unique parish amongst this Acadiana region. We're a hub parish. We always have been ever since the early days. And people come here. I was talking with Mr. Wayman earlier, and ever since I was a kid, my mom came from the farm I grew up on in Acadia Parish to Lafayette to get groceries. We'd come here to Christmas shop. Nothing has changed. Okay, very little has changed in Acadia Parish and Vermilion Parish. They're still largely agrarian type parishes with very little economy or infrastructure. We don't go to Crowley or Iota to eat out, right? Except if you go to DI's out there by where my farm is. But y'all see my point. Our population, 59,000, I think that's very conservative. That's only the last census figure that we were able to get a hold of. Our calls for service at the sheriff's office alone have gone up 30% in the last decade. Property values have not gone up 30% in the last decade. Property values have not kept up with the needs for service that the sheriff's office provides. Next slide. So we already went over this information. Essentially, I'm asking for a half-cent parish-wide sales tax. Why a sales tax and not a property tax? I think because of the unique way our community is used, a sales tax is more appropriate for Lafayette. Property owners, I own property. I own a lot of acreage out in Broussard where I reside. I think we pay enough for the services of the sheriff's office. I'm not going to take a position on property taxes as a whole. We need services. We've got to fund them somehow. But I didn't feel right about, as your sheriff, asking the property owners in this parish to pay for additional services when I see who we arrest every day. I see who uses the majority of our services. People are coming into our community. 40,000 upwards a day come in here to shop and to eat and to go to school. They need to contribute to the infrastructure, not to mention the undocumented people who live in our community who do all the framing of the houses and all the roofing and everything. I mean, they're serving a purpose for our home builders and our other, people who need labor. But they're not paying income tax. They're not paying property tax. They never will pay property tax, but they are using our community. So looking at that, this is the most fair way for everyone to pay a little bit rather than to put an additional burden on the property owners who really aren't in any more need of my services, but yet they need my services to continue. Next slide. So what have I done real quick? If I was y'all, I'd want to know, well, what'd you do, Sheriff, with, to lower cost? Got a little graphic here for you. We reduced overtime expenses by 90%. In 2016, it was $343,000 that we spent in overtime in the jail. Got it down to $34,000. By the way, my guys on patrol and my detectives can't get overtime by policy. I'd love to pay them overtime, but I don't have the money to do it. So I have to give them comp time. So now they're not working their cases, but if they work over, I just have to give them off. Not a real good deal for the public or for the deputies, but that's how it has to be. Reduced my corrections payroll by $2.8 million. I did that a variety of different ways, putting people on a pay scale. There were a lot of unclassified people. Also just consolidating chains of command and pulling in people from outlying programs and putting them on the floor in Lafayette Parish Correctional Center to make a safer jail. But also what it did is it staffed up my floors and it reduced my turnover, and so it ended up in a $2.8 million a year reduction overall in my payroll. Really proud of that. Privatization of the Acadiana Recovery Center, that I turned it over to a private vendor, and my expenses over revenue were about $2.2 million. Now I'm getting $180,000 a year in rent from them. And restructuring contracts. Just to give you all a quick example, so we had a contract to clean the Willow Street facility where I'm in debt, $2,500 a month to clean that building. We were paying to a janitorial service. When we found out about it, we canceled the contract. They tried to sue us and unsuccessfully. I now clean that with inmate labor being supervised by one deputy who also has other duties. Copier contracts, same kind of thing. We've gone through, my point is we've gone through this whole organization. I've cut staff where I could. I was down to about 850 employees, but then I took over the SRO program and had to up another 23 plus employees, but that's a pretty good purpose. I don't think anybody would dispute that. Next slide. This is what we do inside of every city These are the services we provide inside of every city in this parish. One of the big ones, it doesn't jump out on there, but the Juvenile Assessment Center, about 120 juveniles a month get diverted from our justice system through an assessment center that gets into their home life and follows them after they are briefly incarcerated and looks at the root cause of what led to that deviant behavior. I fund that. The sheriff's office funds that and staffs that juvenile assessment center. If we didn't staff it, it would be catastrophic for mainly the Lafayette Police Department, but also the other outlying police departments. But the Lafayette PD, the schools in Lafayette are the main consumers of our services, of our civil services. We're the ones who serve your temporary restraining orders. We're the ones who serve the protective orders. We deal with the vast majority of the emergency committals in this city. All of these things are things I'm going to have to cut if I don't get an additional stream of revenue. Next slide. What do I do outside of that? I thought, everybody's seen the people who cut grass and pick up trash, right? Pretty cool looking, you see out there, it feels good, right? People are out there working, we want that to be the case. That's a big negative drag on me. I did up the rate to where I could break even on paper. After I took office, we were losing about $8,000 a year per inmate crew, and we had 25 crews. So I upped it to where, on paper, I'm not losing money, but it's still a conduit for contraband into my jail. It's still not a good deal for the sheriff's office, but I'm going to continue to do it as long as I can. The savings, I just figured it on $10 an hour per laborer on what we're saving for the consolidated government, Youngsville, Broussard, and so on. We do active shooter training. I don't know if any of y'all have ever been to our academy or taken advantage of the training, but we have trained several hospitals and entities like the courthouse employees, UHC hospital personnel on what to do if you start hearing gunshots in the workplace. Now we offer it a couple of times a month at our facility free of charge so people can get their staffs prepared for that. Funeral escorts, you see us around town. We obviously do more than one a day, 522 last year. Next slide. This is not about pay. From the very beginning, I told my people I wouldn't make this about pay, but I'm telling you what I'm going to do with the money. You'll see that there's one of the documents before you is the covenant that I filed with Louis Perrette in the conveyance records of Lafayette Parish. I told the taxpayers, I'm telling all of you exactly what I'm going to do with this income if y'all approve my tax. I signed my name to it. It's filed in the mortgage records. I'm accountable. That's a contract between me and the voters of Lafayette Parish. No one's ever done this before that I can see. This is unprecedented, but I'm trying to be transparent. We are way behind. The average pay, starting pay at the sheriff's office is $32,000, and the average pay in the parish is $36,499. I cannot continue to compete in the job market and attract and retain qualified people without raising their pay. We've fallen behind. That's really I want people to understand that. State police start at $50,000. We can't, we lose people to the state police every time they run an academy. And what's the problem with that? Well, the problem with it is y'all are paying to train them. Okay, I hire someone, I spend time doing their background, I spend time training them, 14 weeks in an academy, 3 weeks in field training. Well, now they're finally able to answer the first call for service for Lafayette Parish or perform a function that's useful for y'all, and then they go take another job. I lost 2 in the last 2 weeks, just squared away good people who left for the sole reason being paid. But I've got to pay everybody the same across the board. Next slide. The projections, this is just showing what I'm going to share with the different police departments. So there's been some anti-tax rhetoric out there saying there's nothing in it. I think that's been countered by the support from the police chiefs across the parish. There's going to be a mail out going out pretty soon with all their pictures on it posing with me. Essentially, I'm going to supplement the salary through the cities directly to the police officers, $3,000 a year raise, all on up to, for Lafayette police officers, I'm offering them a bit more because they're a larger partner. So this just shows where some of the proceeds of this tax, if it's successful, are going to go. Next slide. What am I going to do with the rest of the money? 50 additional patrol deputies, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I'm going to beef up the patrols that protect us while we sleep and are out there looking for crime, the uniformed presence in our parish, essentially. 40 additional corrections deputies. I don't know if any of y'all, have y'all seen the digital ad that we have showing some of the fights that the deputies have been in? Has anybody seen that? Well, it's out there. We've got it on our Facebook, on Lafayette Law Enforcement's Facebook page, and on the Sheriff's Office Facebook page. These are assaults and batteries that have occurred on deputies since I've been sheriff. It's a really good short video just to show y'all the brutality of what they face. I need more people on the floor to make the deputies safer and to make the inmates safer. I've got some capital expenditures, but the big thing that I'm leading up to is, I've heard from anti-tax groups, you have no sunset provision. This is in perpetuity. There's no sunset provision. Apparently, that's a big deal that we have a sunset provision on a tax. The reason I didn't build a sunset provision into this is because people don't expire, all right? So I'm gonna plus up this 90-plus people and take care of some capital expenditures, but I can't, what am I supposed to tell them 10 years down the road if my tax expires? Thanks for your service, good luck to you, but now we're cutting, basically 100-plus jobs. People don't expire, and not to mention, I don't hire everybody at once, so if I did a 30-year expiration, well, what about the people I hired 15 years down the road to protect and serve us? What would we do with them when this expired? I don't want to take that risk. If this fails, maybe I have to go back and I have to build something like that into it. So on year 6 to 7, once I take care of these capital expenditures and I get my rainy day fund built up, I get this emergency fund built up so I can deal with the ups and downs of the economy, I start reducing your property tax bill. The sheriff's office has 2 millages. So if you've ever heard anybody say about my proposal that, well, he doesn't have a sunset provision, I do. I have a built-in overflow valve where I'm giving back the sales tax revenue to the property owners in this parish. And it's in that covenant in Section 3. I don't know what page it is, but it's Section 3. I tell you in writing, I'm going to reduce it by $5 million once I've got these things done, and that's going to be in year 6 to 7 is when I can do it. So I need y'all to renew my property millage next year, because I'm going to give you the money back. But if y'all take away my property millage and y'all approve this, then we've really done nothing except exchange some money. When I reduce my property millage by $5 million, I'm doing a 30% cut to that millage, okay, to that 8 mil millage. That's unprecedented for government to talk about reducing property taxes. Please take that and spread it amongst your family and friends, and consider this when you consider how to vote. I think I'm being transparent. I'm telling you what I'm going to do with the money, and I'm showing you where I'm going to, in writing, I've put it in writing, where I'm going to reduce and give back to the property owners. I think it's inherently fair, given the structure of Lafayette Parish and the way we use this community, to give back to the property owners and the business owners who are the actual backbone of this community and of Lafayette Parish. Thank you. I'll take questions now.
What is the largest number up there for? It says future unfunded liability.
That is my what I owe on my retirement. I'm upside down by $20 million on future retirement obligations, as per the independent audit done by the state auditor's contract auditor.
Where's the funding liability now for that?
Well, it's $20 million. Yeah, and that's something that I've been, some anti-tax people have questioned me. They said, look, that's common to be upside down on those obligations. I think it's only going to grow. I would rather be funded for that because I owe this obligation to these retirees. The low pay, the quid pro quo for that is you get a good retirement. I need to be solvent to pay those health insurance benefits for the retirees and so on. It was 15 years, now it's 20 years. If you work for the sheriff's office, you get your health insurance for the rest of your life. So we raised it to 20 years so we could save money, because people want to keep them from gaming the system.
Now, the second question is based upon my ignorance. So all of these surrounding communities have a law enforcement, where I see revenue is going to come from those communities. How does the sheriff's department operate with those communities? Is the jurisdiction the parish? Is the jurisdiction all of those?
It's an excellent question. It's a big misconception that my jurisdiction is only the unincorporated parts of the parish. I've seen comments on Facebook, well, your jurisdiction has shrunk. Unless Lafayette Parish shrinks, my jurisdiction doesn't shrink. Constitutionally, the sheriff is the chief law enforcement authority in Lafayette Parish. So the same way for every other 63 other parishes in the state of Louisiana. If Youngsville decides to abolish its police department next month, I have automatic responsibility to pick up those calls for service. So what happens in Youngsville is whenever they have a homicide, we're there with our crime scene. We seamlessly take over the calls for service. Same thing happened recently in Broussard with their last shooting. They had a homicide, they're tied up at 2 in the morning with all 3 of their officers who are working or on the crime scene. We pick up the 911 because we already dispatch for them 24/7 all year long, and our deputies are there seamlessly integrated to answer those calls. The other things that y'all need to know that we provide for these departments, there's no reason for Broussard PD to have a fully functioning SWAT team, but you need to have access to a SWAT team. I have the jurisdiction and I have the SWAT team. I provide that. When they have a barricaded person, when they have a murder suspect that they need to go after that's dangerous, that meets the threat matrix, we step in and we handle that for them.
Thank you for curing my ignorance.
It's a great question. I think a lot of people have those questions. Yes, sir.
So I'd like to chime in. The New Iberia, that's where I grew up. They got rid of their police department for a decade, and they just reinstituted it back. Yeah, you definitely don't want the sheriff to be spread that thin. That's what we learned there in Iberia Parish. But the rainy day fund, how do you envision that size being relative to? Is that going to be 1 year, 2 years, 3 years of operational costs?
I want a year in the bank, because here's what could happen if we get devastated by a hurricane and our local economy goes in the tank. My sales tax revenue goes to virtually nothing, right? Everybody's hurt by that. Yet, at that point, more than ever, we have to have those services to rebuild our community. That's what I've learned from talking to other sheriffs across the country. That's what the prudent thing to do is. We can debate, well, it should be 6 months, should be a year. Mr. Como has cautioned me about reducing the property millage because it's a steady stream of revenue. But I think in Lafayette I can do it as long as I have an emergency fund built up with a year's balance. Then I can deal with the ups and downs. It gives me enough time, because it's not going to all go away at once, but it gives me enough time to rise and fall and make adjustments. And as far as, the New Iberia experiment, we'll call it, goes, it wasn't done right. There are other places in the country like Florida and California that the sheriff has jurisdiction and there are no city police departments. I'm not advocating for that. I'm trying very clearly by this proposal to make these departments all stronger. I want them to continue, because we're stronger together than the sum of our individual parts, if y'all have ever heard that before. Truly believe that. We're better off with them all fully functioning. Really good question.
Sheriff, can you mention about the food and drug exemption also?
Oh, yep. It's my chief deputy, Carlos Stute. Some of y'all may recognize him. He was the chief in Karen Crow PD for 14 years. We have a food and drug exclusion on this tax. So if anyone, has concerns about this affecting people on fixed income or, can't afford their medication or things like that, it doesn't hit you at the grocery store and it does not hit you at the pharmacist. Thank you.
And I think it's just important to know, if I can have a second, about the Lafayette Parish Correctional Center. A lot of people have the misconception to think the sheriff owns the correctional center. The correctional center is owned by Lafayette Consolidated Government as well as the sheriff's main office. We house right now about 760, I'm looking at our major in the back, about 760 inmates within LPCC, and about another 250 on Willow at our work release location that we're talking about, where we owe the debt on that facility. But out of those 700 somewhat prisoners, 600 are unsentenced parish inmates. They're sitting in jail, waiting to go to court or waiting to be adjudicated. The issue that we have is, and both of these mayors know what we're kind of talking about, we get paid $3.50 by parish government. State statute and Attorney General opinions say that we could charge additional fees, but we've never asked to go up. The issue is that right now, today, in our economy, it's costing us about $62 a day to house a parish prisoner that's unsentenced. So we're paying out of our budget about $58 a day per prisoner that's sitting in the jail today. There are solutions that we could do. We could transfer 300 prisoners tomorrow if we decided to, and we don't need anyone's approval or authority. That's totally up to the sheriff if he finds that they're at-risk inmates or they're a security risk. The problem is, we know the situation the parish is in now. If I transfer 300 inmates tomorrow to a sheriff that may give me the $24.50 a day fee that the state requires for housing that DOC pays the sheriffs throughout the state, he may give me that, but the majority of the sheriffs charge about $40 a day because of those added expenses. If I send 300 tomorrow at $24.50 a day, that now shifts the burden onto the parish government, to now, which is a mandate, pay about $6.2 million to house those 300 inmates that we're housing here for much less cost. You know, we have that authority to do that. We don't want to do that. That's not a solution to shift the burden back on the parish government. But right now, we've identified about $5.5 million of services that we're providing in the jail that is not the responsibility of the sheriff. We have 440 deputies assigned to corrections. Our payroll is $24 million. As you saw, we brought down $21 million in just corrections alone. Our payroll is $3.6 million a month. You know, at the end of the day, when you look at all the numbers, it leaves us with about $1.6 million a month to operate. That's for everything else, all the other costs associated with everything that we have. People don't realize the papers. We process about 12,000 papers a month through our civil department because we are the office of the court for the district attorney's office. We handle all of that, and we issue and serve all the warrants throughout the parish for every municipality. So every warrant that's drawn upon at the district courthouse, the sheriff's office has to serve these warrants, recall these warrants. That is a big, big issue within our community. And we do this for every municipality, not just the city of Lafayette. So when you hear the people say we don't do anything in the city of Lafayette, we don't patrol, that is very, very misleading, and that is not a fact. So please, know that, and know there's a lot more that goes on during the day within the communities that a lot of people don't see and they don't pay for. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. Yeah, it is true. We do conduct a tremendous amount of enforcement activities in the city of Lafayette and all the other cities. I've got a question that I would want to know if I were y'all. So what are you going to do, Sheriff, if this tax isn't approved by the voters? What's your next move? My CFO tells me that I've got to cut 105 jobs in order to basically right the ship, to get financially right. Everybody here knows, who's run a business or manages anything, that labor is your biggest cost. I have tried from day one to eliminate unnecessary positions. I eliminated a lot of captain and lieutenant positions when I took over. Wasn't a popular decision because people like to have their rank and their higher salary to up their retirement, but I took out middle management and I put more people on the ground. I put all those resources into the jail where people get hurt the most, and I put them on the road 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But I can't do anything more other than cutting essential services. I'll have to cut civil deputies. I'll have to cut criminal enforcement deputies. I will have to shut down 1 or 2 floors of the jail and consolidate my labor into, to where I can keep my deputies safe. That will be the net result of this. I don't want to be an alarmist. It's not, in my nature to do that, but it just very pragmatically, very quietly, I will thank the voters for their guidance, and I will set about making systemic cuts until I get the ship right, until I feel like we're going to be solvent, we're going to be safe, and we can at least pay the deputies that I do have what they need to be paid.
You just mentioned also just about from day one what our automatic expenses are, 74%.
Oh, yeah. Well, we're everybody who's run a business too, you kind of understand this. On January 1st, I think the anti-tax people like to say, well, he's got $64 million. He's already got enough money. Look, I wish I could do it with fewer employees. I really do. But I think I've made my case for that. On day one, 74 to 75% of my money, it's gone, all right, on day one. That goes to salary and benefits for retirees. People are living longer. I've got to keep them, on medication and so forth. It's just a tough business model. But anyway, I don't want to, harp on that. I mean, it's just something we've got to deal with as a community. I'm going to leave y'all with this. I think security, in the hierarchy of needs, when you don't have security, it doesn't really matter what else is going on in your life, right? It's kind of like if you get a terminal illness, it doesn't matter how much money you have, your health becomes your #1 problem. Same thing with our security, especially for our families. This is about security for the future of Lafayette Parish. Y'all elected me and hired me to do this job. This, in my judgment, is what I need to be prepared for 3 years down the road whenever things start to, as our community continues to develop. You had one more point?
One more question is, in the absence of a sunset clause, is there anything built in for systemic review, like 5-year, 10-year, and just performance metrics around getting this type of funding results in, either this type of increased, safety, security, or anything along those lines, or maybe we just we're able to have some level of transparency. Just
in my covenant, if you read section 3, I'm telling you what I'm going to spend the money on. And so once I get all these, you saw a lot of capital expenditures on there, and I didn't want to take up too much time out of respect for the other speakers, but once I'm done with these complete the shell of this building and I redo my crime scene and evidence and things like that, things we need to investigate crimes, then I've got just my labor cost, okay? Those become your only cost because I've made those capital expenditures. Now it costs a fraction of what it cost me to complete that shell of that building to maintain it. And that's where I'm getting to my 7-year projection on when I cut 30%. And I'll keep cutting it and adjusting it until I find that sweet spot. Thank you, sir.
To give you an idea how good the sheriff is and his investigative skills, I had just leaned over to Caroline and said, he hasn't talked about what will happen if this tax doesn't pass. And I was about to ask the question when he said that, so I'm a little scared about how you read that. That's pretty talented. Sheriff, thank you for what you do, and your deputies and your entire team. We appreciate what you do every day. Let's give one more round of applause for Sheriff Garber. Our next speaker will discuss the Lafayette Home Rule Charter Amendment. If passed, this amendment will replace the existing Lafayette City Parish Council with a Lafayette City Council to govern the city of Lafayette and a Lafayette Parish Council to govern the parish of Lafayette. I want to welcome Joey Durrell, former City Parish President of Lafayette, who served this community for 3 terms. That's the maximum allowed by the charter. Among other accomplishments, Joey led the establishment of LUS Fiber. And Joey, I personally thank you for that. That's a great economic development tool for us to use in our marketing efforts across the country. We really appreciate that. It's a great tool to have, great arrow to have in our quiver. It's Louisiana's only municipally owned broadband fiber network. Joey was the second person elected to the role of City Parish President. Today, Joey will be speaking in support of the Charter Amendment. And before I turn it over to him, I will say that that One Acadiana, the Executive Committee has taken a stance in favor of this Charter Amendment because of the situation and the stance that we've taken in the past regarding equal representation while still enjoying the benefits of consolidated government. So with that, I will turn it over to Joey Durrell.
You know, I haven't done this in a long time, so I have some notes. You know, Troy just said was, he said it won't undo consolidation. Does this work? Does this work?
See, right.
former City Parish President, that's why.
I don't get the respect. Anyway, you can't undo something that doesn't exist. We are not, that's a misnomer, we are not a consolidated government. The taxes for parish government are kept in a separate checkbook, and the taxes for city government are kept in a separate checkbook. What's been consolidated are the services. And the idea was that if we have one mayor, president, we don't have two of them, so it saves a little bit of money. If we don't have two councils, we save a little bit of money. How to get started on this today. I try to think, how do you start? Because this topic could go so many different directions. You know, one of the things that, for me, I could say this statement right now and walk out the door and would assume everybody in here would say he's right, we have to vote for this. And that statement is, there is no mechanism available for Lafayette to decide how to govern itself. The city of Lafayette people have no mechanism in state government, because this was done by legislation. It wasn't done by the city council and parish council working together on this. State legislation forced this on us. Lafayette can't call for a vote today to see how it votes itself. The only way Lafayette can determine how to govern itself is to let 5 other municipalities in the unincorporated area vote on how Lafayette governs itself. That is unheard of in America. There is probably not another city in America that has that issue. And so when I talk about we need to get back to an American form of government, and I hear people say, what does that mean, American form of government? I say, read about this little tea party they had in Boston. You know, that's where it all began. That is a very fundamental piece of American form of government, and we have deviated from that. I've heard people say, this is a progressives movement to raise taxes, and I'm thinking to myself, we want to get back to what's worked in America for over 200 years. We are the ones that deviated. We're the ones that were progressive to try to do something different. And we have deviated from the American form of government. We have, you know, when I hear that San Francisco is looking at letting non-citizens vote in their local elections, and most of us go, are they crazy? I'm thinking, well, we're way ahead of San Francisco. We've been doing that since 1996. And it's true. It is true. We have non-citizens, non-tax-paying citizens of the parish of Lafayette who are not citizens of the city of Lafayette voting on how citizens of Lafayette taxes are spent. When my police chief would ask for our council for resources for issues downtown, and it passed with who you would consider the city councilman, but it overall failed when the parish councilman got into it, you know, gave their vote. You know, it was unbelievable to me that our city was being governed by people who don't live in the city, don't pay the taxes, don't vote for the taxes, but they can vote for taxes. One of the things I've heard is this is all about trying to raise taxes. Let's talk about that just for a minute. We have, I went and talked to one group one day, and they said, there's only 2 councilmen that ever vote right on taxes. I said, you're right. I said, you've got 2 very ineffective councilmen that have voted against every single tax, every single issue that's come up for the city of Lafayette and the parish in many cases, and they have never succeeded. Every single one of those taxes that you didn't want for them to the council to vote on went to a vote of the people, and with the exception of the airport tax, I believe, every one of those taxes failed. So why are you so afraid of the people voting on taxes? So, you know, I think what happens with a lot of these people who take those positions are watching the national politics, maybe even state politics, where they can impose taxes on us. City government and parish government can't do that. City government and parish government can only give you the ability. I put a tax up in 2006 to fix roads. I'd heard it. You know, the #1 issue in Lafayette, traffic, traffic, traffic. I put a tax up in 2006, a year before my reelection. Good luck, Sheriff. I put a tax up in 2006 for traffic, and I thought, man, this is a slam dunk. You know, we just passed the fiber issue, and that worked really well. We were still having our little honeymoon period. I thought people are going to vote for this because it's the most important issue in Lafayette. It got spanked. I think 65 to 35% voted no to that tax. But a good thing happened. People quit complaining about traffic. You know, and so my point is, while we put a tax up, it failed. So the council, you know, I never could understand why, because I don't think many politicians ever put a tax forward that they don't truly need or don't truly believe they need. But why would anybody be so afraid to let the people make that decision? You know, so anyway, you know, the other thing is we talk about this. I've heard people say this doesn't fix anything. What a bunch of baloney. It fixes a lot. You know, one of the things that I found in living this for 12 years was that this form of government fosters more mistrust of government that we already have. You know, I had to serve multiple masters. One day, I went to one of the councilmen. We were having sort of a little beginning of an annexation issue with one of the towns. And I wanted to write a letter to all the residents in the unincorporated area and tell them that you may be getting annexed without your knowledge, and you should be aware of it, and you should also know that it should be your decision whether you annex in Broussard, Youngsville, Lafayette, or not at all. You should be in control of that decision. I went to the councilman for that area and I said, look, you want to sign this letter? It's pretty benign. It's a pretty benign letter. Oh, no, I can't sign that. I represent a little bit of Youngsville, a little bit of Broussard, a little bit of Lafayette, and all that unincorporated area. And that was the light bulb that went off for me first about this form of government, is that he was answering and he was serving multiple masters. What he never understood was he was a city councilman for Lafayette. He was a parish councilman for everybody else. And understand, everything we did and everything we do in Lafayette consolidated government, kind of consolidated government, is based on a tax. So when he said that he couldn't sign it because of that, I realized he's right. And that's when I realized I serve 7 masters. I serve all 6 cities in the parish of Lafayette, and I serve the unincorporated area. But again, it was easy for me to change hats because everything we did, like I said, was based on a tax. It was either a city tax or a parish tax. But when I had neighborhoods come to me way outside of any of the cities and beyond our reach, who was bringing in glasses of yellow water, horrible-looking water, and begging the parish president to get water to them from the city, I would tell them, I told them one time, I said, as the mayor of Lafayette, I have a water system. But as the parish president, I don't have a water system. And every time I talk to the mayor, he ignores me. And they didn't smile. They didn't find any humor in that at all. And that's when I realized they don't see the mayor and the parish president. All they saw was Joey Durrell. And he didn't care about us. And so it started becoming more and more apparent to me that with the form of government that we have makes it much more difficult to gain the trust of people with what we do. So I think this gets us in a form of government that is, when I hear, like I said, when I hear about people talking about this being progressive, the city of Lafayette has very unique issues from law enforcement, traffic, and various other things. We have a downtown in a fairly large city, the 214th largest city in America. We have a downtown that's got a good bar scene and night scene and a lot of people. The people in the unincorporated area, and understand something, mostly when we talk about parish, we're really talking about the unincorporated area, because the mantra has been for 40 or 50 years that unincorporated Lafayette, or I should say parish government, has spent most of its money in the unincorporated area. The idea is that when a city annexes that business that you talked about, when the city annexes that business, and to get to that business, they also have to annex, because they have to be contiguous, they annex a ditch. Well, the attitude in parish government is, that's your problem now. You wanted the good, with the good you get the bad. So we have spent, for all practical purposes, the last 40 or 50 years, parish dollars have been spent in the unincorporated area. This government, consolidated government, this government that we have today, LCG, has no effect on the small towns at all. It had no effect, there was no benefit to them by consolidating government, and there's no negative by undoing the single parish, the single council that we have. When we talk about parish government, for all practical purposes, we really are talking about unincorporated Lafayette. Conrad Como told me one time, he said he served in the parish council many years ago, and I think you, Kathy Ashworth, Darrell Schwesh, and maybe Louis Benjamin, all lived inside the city of Lafayette. But he said, we knew that our focus was the unincorporated area. The city of Lafayette had a mayor and had a city council. And by the way, Mayor, how many councilmen did you have? 5. So there are people that are worried about only having 5 councilmen making a decision. Yeah, but it was even simpler because you had 5 councilmen. I always envied a lot of the smaller towns to watch their council vote unanimous to do great things for their towns. And in my case, I had councilmen afraid to vote for things for Lafayette, as I did with the annexation issue, afraid to vote for things that were good for the city of Lafayette because they had to get votes in the other areas, the other towns. So it's a real difficult thing. One of the things that I've heard people say, and initially one of the things, it blew my mind. The big worry was that, well, people who serve in the city parish council today if this happens, they can run for re-election and term limits go away. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, it is constitutional. You know, it's okay in America to do that. And second of all, as it turns out, the council fixed that, and they can't run for re-election. I never did think that was, to me, that was the gnat on the elephant. It wasn't the elephant. You know, I mean, the elephant is the fact that you don't have the ability for a parish council to focus on the unique needs of the unincorporated area. And those unique needs, let's face it, are roads that are turning back into the gravel roads they once were, and drainage. Because they don't have, the only mechanism they have to fix those things is parish government. The cities, Karen Crow, Youngsville, Scott, Dussault, Broussard, they have taxes to take care of what's inside their cities. And again, parish government has done very, very little. And I will tell you, there are very, very rare exceptions. We cleaned a ditch shortly after I got in office, and that ditch crossed over Albertsons Parkway in Broussard. The culverts in there didn't match up with the cleaning and the redevelopment of that coulee, that ditch. So we had to widen the culverts in there. We worked something out with Broussard, and parish government contributed a little bit to dig up the road and put the bigger culverts in. So to say that no money is spent in the cities is not quite fair, but I will tell you 95%, 99% of the money for parish government goes to the unincorporated area. No matter where you live in Lafayette Parish, you pay parish taxes. 70% of the parish taxes that go to parish government come from the citizens of the city of Lafayette. The other 30% is divided up among the 5 towns and the unincorporated area. The greatest piece of that money goes to the parish school board. We have nothing to do with that. LEDA, the airport, you know, those are things that are, so when I talk to people about parish government, the truth is all you really have on your mind is roads and drainage. You know, the rest of it is really, you know, the parish council is the governing authority of the airport, but they don't have a lot. I mean, the airport commission runs the airport. They approve the budget. That's about it, and it's kind of cursory. So I think that's probably it in a nutshell. Let me make sure I didn't leave something out that I wanted to. That's it. I mean, really, you know, the only other thing I did write down, I want to say, Baton Rouge did what we have in Lafayette. They did it in the 1940s. You know, part of this consolidation effort, at least the sales part was, and it was done with, again, with the best of intentions. It looked good on paper. It sounded good. It even felt good. You know, we're going to all get in this together and sing Kumbaya. Baton Rouge did that probably for the same reasons in the 1940s. Today they have at least, I think, 2 new cities working on a 3rd new city. It hasn't been kumbaya. It has been divisive. It hasn't been one of those things that makes people feel better. It is something that has been more divisive for their parish than it has been inclusive. And I fear that we're heading the direction of Baton Rouge. This is our opportunity to fix that, and I think at that I'll just take some questions.
I'm just curious, what would happen to the mayor-president role?
That doesn't get fixed with this. I will tell you my own personal belief is that shortly after this passes, and when I say shortly, let's think in terms of 4 years because that's when elections happen. I believe very possibly that within the next 4 years there will be an amendment put up, if this passes, by the city council to call for an election of a mayor. I think there'll be something put up to call for an election for 7 councilmen. That's what I believe will happen. And but right now, the only way that Lafayette could possibly have a mayor who has to pay the taxes, has to be a resident of the city of Lafayette, is for the whole parish to vote for that. Unheard of in America. Bradley?
Can you explain why there's so many other things added into this, like elimination of the LPUA, changing of the nomination process for Civil Service Board, changing of the number of the recall process? Why are there so many other things added into that?
The LPUA did not exist under Mayor LaStrapes. The LPUA was a mechanism for the governance of a city-owned utility. And so with the elimination of non-citizens sitting on our council, there is no need for the LPUA. So it's now a city council like it was envisioned to be many, not in the 18. From a governance standpoint, you will still have one public works department. You're still going to have one chief financial officer. You're still going to have consolidated services. Theoretically, if a parish council said we want our own public works department, they can put that to a vote of the people to raise the money. I don't think they would ever win it. I think it'd be, they'd be shooting themselves in the foot. But those things are really just necessary pieces. Before this form of government, parish employees were not civil service. Sheriff's employees are not civil service. The clerk of court's office is not civil service. Conrad's office is not civil service. Those are all parish governance. City of Lafayette is civil service. I believe some of the smaller towns, when they hit a certain level of population, will have to become, their employees will become civil service. So this, because we would be going to a city form of government and a parish form of government, the civil service piece of it will be City of Lafayette people. Yes, sir.
Again, I'm trying to get my brain wrapped around this. You're explaining that you're going to create a separate elected structure, and then you indicated, in your estimation, that there would be pressure to have a separate mayor or a city mayor. I don't know of any elected structure that doesn't have its bureaucracy along with it. So how are you going to maintain a consolidated structure? And then if the city decides it wants to have its own flood control department because we have to manage water, where's the money going to come from for that? Because it's going to take people to do that. I see a pressure on the consolidated services to get split up, and either they're going to get better or they're going to get worse, but they won't stay the same. So where do you see that going?
I don't see it really going anywhere. I mean, first of all, the city pretty much funds most of consolidation right now anyway. That should be a big red flag for anybody. The potential sale of the courthouse, of the parish parking garage recently, was really a scheme to get city dollars into parish government. Parish government doesn't have the ability financially to have its own public works department. All it will simply do is contract with the city of Lafayette to go clean a ditch and to go dig a ditch. So city government isn't, from a public works standpoint, I mean, I know you just use that as an example. I just don't see any pressure. And the fact of the matter is, everything you can think of exists today. I mean, if there's a watershed issue, if there's a drainage issue, it exists today, whether we're consolidated or not. You know, water and drainage and law enforcement, all that, it kind of doesn't really know boundaries. And so if there's a water issue today inside the city, it's got to be taken care of, whether we're consolidated or not. If there's a water issue outside the city, it should be taken care of, whether we're consolidated or not, except for the fact that the money is not consolidated. So that pressure exists today. Thus the frustration. You know, I mean, we have not, when people say this doesn't fix anything, as I said earlier, that's baloney. It fixes a fundamental form of government that we have in America. And when I hear him say that, I said, well, let me ask you this. What problems do we have? How do we still have problems 22 years later after consolidation? Evidently, consolidation didn't fix it either. You know, but we still have deviated from an American form of government based on taxation and representation. We have today representation without taxation. We have representative form of government who don't tax themselves the same way they impose a tax, or at least they give people an opportunity to vote on a tax. So they could vote for a tax for the city of Lafayette to put that to a vote, and yet they won't pay that tax. You know, that's just, it's in conflict with how we govern ourselves in America.
To confirm my understanding of what you just said, since there's a parish tax, the city tax, that revenue that is currently raised would be dedicated to city issues as opposed to being allocated to other places, and those other communities will have to.
There's a couple of misnomers. City dollars cannot go outside the city. It is illegal, except we have found a way to have city dollars leak out of the city. When I got into office, this is very, very important. When I got into office, of course, I mean, it takes you 6 months to find the restrooms, right? It's a complicated thing. And so it took me a few years to realize this. And literally what happened was one night about 3 o'clock in the morning, I woke up and the light bulb went off. And I was at the office by 4 o'clock. I went into a back room and I found all the old budgets. And the budgets I was looking at was 1996, 97, 98, 99, 2000. 96 was the beginning of consolidation. There's something in that budget called allocation tables. The allocation is how you allocate the portion of this government for the parish to basically pay back the city. Well, in 1996, 97, 98, and 99, my office was paid by the parish to the tune of 40%, which made sense. The city of Lafayette probably had about 60% of the residents of the parish inside the city of Lafayette. 40% of the residents lived outside the city of Lafayette, anywhere else in the parish. Then in 2000, I go to the allocation table, and my office was now being paid 86% was being paid for by the city, and 14% was being paid for by the parish. Big light bulb, right? So what happened? So I look at the budget message and understand something. When we put our budget message in the budget, I remember writing in my budget message one time that our employees were now going to have to start contributing $1.52 more to their health insurance. I mentioned $1.52 because it was significant to the employees. When the allocation tables changed from 1999 to 2000, I looked at the CFO, the CAO, and the mayor president. There wasn't a mention of a change in the allocation tables, not a mention. So it was hidden in broad daylight. It was hidden right in front of everybody in a very complicated book. But at that point, city dollars started leaking out of city government. So when you talk about funding city police, fire, cutting grass, digging ditches, city dollars were no longer available to city government. And the people in the city of Lafayette didn't vote for city dollars to go outside of the city. So we found a mechanism. President Robideau recently said, I understand, I don't blame him. I understand it's a difficult issue. The reason, he said this in a paper. Well, that's probably not true then. But anyway, he said the reason we changed the allocation tables back was because parish government cannot afford to pay its share of consolidation. What does that mean? City dollars are now leaking again into parish government. Not cleaning ditches, not fixing anything, but it's leaking into parish government to maintain the employees and administration, that sort of thing. Again, the parking garage was really basically an idea of how to get some city dollars outside of the city into parish government, something nobody voted on who lives inside the city. I'm not sure if I answered your question, but.
Well, you helped clarify my understanding, so thank you.
Yeah, in your professional opinion, since you were mayor for a while, how much this is going to cost if we do pass this to desolidate?
Well, I think it'll save us millions of dollars. I don't see it costing anything. I mean, what it's costing us today, as I tell people all the time, if you want to see a strain on your taxes to the point where there will be a necessity for proposing more taxes, keep the government just like it is. Because what's going to cause the taxes to go up in as much as anything, I mean, the needs out in the parish exist in every parish in Louisiana and every county in America. Parish and county governments are struggling to maintain roads, and I've seen it in North Louisiana where roads that I used to drive on that were paved are now gravel roads. They can't do it anymore. But I believe
3 things it's going to save us. You said it's going to save us millions of dollars. So 3 things that you think it's going to save us in.
First of all, city dollars will be more available because they're not going to be taken to go into parish government or to support parish government share of consolidation. So that's millions of dollars for the city of Lafayette. When there was a point where I went to Laurie Toops, who was our chief financial officer, when this all started kind of coming to light for me and it all started making sense. And I said, Laurie, can we put in the budget how much the shortfall is for parish government that it owes the city of Lafayette. She said, we can't do that. State law requires that we have a balanced budget. We can't show that there's a negative. And so we try to find ways for parish government. One of the things we did towards the end of my term was we took a parish tax, and basically started funding most of public works with that parish tax, because that was the only way we could get the parish government to really fund its share of what it owed for consolidation. I had done an analysis when I was in office that if we truly did what we're doing today, and if the parish council was to quit paying its share of consolidation, we would put about $6 million into the checkbook of parish government to do projects. So if I'll give you a very minor example. Parish government pays its share of the International Center. The International Center was always a city department. Well, when it consolidated, it also became part of parish government, and so parish government has to pay its share of that. So I asked Laura, we did some analysis, and I said, if parish government just quit paying towards consolidation and put that money in the bank, but then contracted with the CFO and paid the CFO $75,000 a year to do the books for the parish, which are pretty easy to do. If they paid, let's say, first of all, they don't even need a parish president. Cities all around America have city managers. Counties all around America have county managers. You don't even need to have a parish president. They can have a parish council who has a secretary and maybe a parish manager as a full-time person, and their whole function would be to contract with the city of Lafayette to clean ditches. And so in my estimation back then, if I have the number right, was $6 million would go into doing projects in the city without raising any taxes, and that would happen immediately. So it'll save parish money, but more importantly is parish government's going to still have a problem. This hasn't fixed it. It's not good. This is not going to change the taxes in the parish, but it will give parish residents, and again, I'm really, in my mind, what I'm thinking is unincorporated parish. Like I said, this has really so little to do, if anything at all, with the small towns. It's just insignificant. But parish residents will now have a 5-member council, like Conrad and them had when he was on the council. They will have a parish council focused on those drainage and those road needs. And then when they say, this is what we want to do, people will know that their focus is on their unique issues. And when the city council says we have a unique issue in downtown Lafayette, then you have focused councils as you have in 99.999% of America. So I do believe it will certainly save the city money, and it will give the parish government the ability, I think, to evolve to a point where they exist to contract with the city to do some ditches and some roads. Really, no questions. Don't walk out and say, "Well, I wanted to ask him, but I didn't." Are there any questions really that would?
Okay, one more. It's really quick, I promise. The funds that the parish is now paying for, like the International Center for consolidation, after this happens, would the parish then be able to remove those funds?
They would be able to. Yeah. I mean, now you have. I'll use the parish parking garage as an example. The way that would have happened under a normal government, the parish president would have gone to the mayor and said, "Mayor, we would like to sell you a parking garage. We can't maintain it. It's horrible. It's terrible. But we'd be happy to let you have it for $750,000. And the mayor would say, "Are you out of your mind? The thing is horrible. You're going to condemn it. We don't want it. It's your responsibility." But you know what? Let me talk to a couple of councilmen. You bring a couple of councilmen into your office and you say, "Look, the parish president wants us to buy the parking garage. He wants us to pay him $750, $50,000. I think he's out of his mind. But it's in our city. It's blight on our downtown. It's affecting property values downtown. It's in terrible shape. My proposal would be for the city council to give me the ability to negotiate with him, and we'll go to him and say, look, we're going to take that parish parking garage off your hands for free.
And in addition to that, there's a couple little strips of land around the parish parking garage that's owned by the parish. We're going to take that too. Now that gives us control of 75% of that block, so that when the old federal courthouse gets redeveloped, we now have some more land to help redevelop that. So we're going to take that parish parking garage off your hands for free. We're going to take those other strips of land that's owned by the parish into city government. And we know that we're going to have to spend $1.5 million bulldozing it, tearing it down, an expense to us that we shouldn't have. But it's in our city, and I can justify spending some money to improve our downtown area and maybe do something great with that area. Now you have an arm's length transaction. You have a city mayor and a parish president. You have a city council and a parish council negotiating something, as opposed to today. You know, one of the most fascinating things, and this garage brought it up, one of the most fascinating things that I've watched as it relates to this subject was to watch the liberal on the council become the conservative, and the conservative on the council become the liberal. It was awesome. And it happened just the other night with the parish parking garage, where a liberal, whether a quote-unquote conservative on the council said, we need that money to balance our budget. And the quote-unquote liberal on the council said, wait a second, we've worked hard all these years to get that money in the bank. This is our money, you know, you shouldn't get it. And I turned to my wife, I said, isn't this fascinating? I said, the liberal has become the conservative, you know, and the conservative has become the liberal. And it's so interesting to me to watch human nature, because when the shoe is now on the other foot, they were completely they reversed roles. And I saw that at a council meeting one time. It was on
subject again, where the conservative on the council was talking about how important consolidating. In fact, he said one time, he said, you know, I just feel like we're consolidated. I said, well, I feel like I have a head full of hair. How does that work for you? I said, this is not about feeling, this is about reality. And I said, and so, but it's really fascinating to me, even in this, to watch. I don't do a whole lot of Facebook anymore. I like to watch funny videos and stuff. But to watch some of the people on Facebook, the extreme right and the extreme left, are together on this. And I saw that in other aspects of local government and radio shows and things like that, how often the extremes agree. They come from different angles, but the bottom line is they're really just obstructionists. You know, and so it's been a fascinating thing to watch the far left and the far right on Facebook agree with each other for different reasons, but the result's still the same. It's obstructionism, and so you know you know, anyway, I've answered your question, but that's it. Carla?
I was just going to thank you for your leadership and your help on this, and thank One Acadiana before we wrapped up. And if anybody has any additional questions, several of us in the room are involved with the actual PAC that's working to support it, and we're happy to, you know, spend as much time as anybody needs to learn more about the issue. So thank you all.
Thank you, Carla. Yeah, and I want to thank the mayor. He was one of the great leaders of Lafayette from 1980 to 1992.
88 to 90.
Yeah. And
much simpler time than what you had.
Yeah, you haven't had a lot of Facebook back then, did you?
That's okay.
Thank y'all very much.
All right, let's give one more round of applause to our speakers, Sheriff Garber and Joe Moore. You know, as we prepare to vote, it's important for us to engage our community leaders and our elected officials so that we can make an informed decision. And what I want to encourage you all to do is not only, obviously want to encourage you to vote. Early voting is open now until Saturday. That's correct. And then the actual election day is next Saturday, the 8th. So encourage you to vote, whether it's early voting or actually on election day. But also share what you've learned. You all have spheres of influence. Be sure to help educate people and share what you've learned today. Share the points that you've heard today, the facts and figures that you've heard from Sheriff Garber and from Joey Durrell. And again, we thank you guys for being here. Thank you very much. I encourage you to go out and vote, and we appreciate you spending your morning with us. Thank you.